All right, let's dive right into this explainer and take a look behind the curtain of the direct-to-consumer fashion industry. We all know the modern dream, right? You sketch out a really cool hoodie design, launch a slick Shopify site, and just wait for a viral TikTok to send the orders rolling in. On paper, it looks like an absolute goldmine. But today, we're going to strip away those aesthetic Instagram filters and dig straight into the brutal, fascinating reality of what it actually takes to survive in this space.
The core mystery we are going to unravel today starts by simply following the money. In 2023, direct-to-consumer fashion brands reported average gross margins of somewhere between 65 and 75%. When you hear that, it sounds absolutely incredible. Yet, despite those massive margins, the vast majority of these companies quietly go bankrupt within just 36 months of launching. So what's going on here? Where exactly is the disconnect between the spreadsheet and reality?
Well, the trap that first-time founders usually fall into is falling in love with a complete fiction. They look at a $12 hoodie manufactured at a factory overseas, price it at $60 retail, and celebrate a massive 80% gross margin. But that math is dangerously simple. Honestly, it's practically useless because it measures the wrong thing, totally blinding founders to the fact that the real business and the real expenses live entirely outside of that basic equation.
This creates a staggering divide between the rare unicorns and a massive graveyard of forgotten brands. On one hand, you have wild outliers like Gymshark, starting in a literal garage and soaring past a $1 billion valuation. On the other hand, because platforms like Shopify and TikTok have virtually erased the barriers to entry, a flood of over 1.7 million new clothing stores launched globally in 2022 alone. The crazy part? The vast majority never even reach 100 total sales. Same industry, identical paper margins, but wildly different outcomes.
Because think about it. That hoodie doesn't just magically teleport from a factory floor to a customer's doorstep. The hidden logistics act like a relentless toll booth at every single step of the journey. If you ship by sea, you're paying $4 to $6 a unit and waiting months. Need it faster, by air? That's up to $15. Then you hit the border for import duties, pay a third-party warehouse just to store the stuff, and hand over a hefty cut to payment processors like Stripe. Add in custom packaging, and the cash is bleeding out fast.
And then, bam! You hit a massive speed bump that physical retail stores rarely have to deal with: the staggering rate of online returns. We all do it. We order 2 sizes just to be safe and send one back. But for a brand, up to 40% of their stock can come back in the mail. When it does, the brand is forced to eat the outbound shipping, the payment fees, and the processing costs entirely, with absolutely zero revenue to show for it.
When you add all that hidden friction together, reality sets in pretty quickly. That $12 hoodie is quietly ballooned into a $35 landed cost. The product itself, along with its physical journey around the world, has just eaten up more than half of that $60 price tag before you have spent a single cent telling the world it even exists. And here is the scariest part. The absolute most expensive aspect of this entire operation hasn't even entered the equation yet.
That missing piece? Advertising. And to understand the current bloodbath in customer acquisition, we have to look back to the devastating Apple iOS update in April 2021. Back in 2015, buying a customer through Facebook or Instagram ads cost you around $12. But when Apple allowed iPhone users to opt out of tracking, the algorithms basically lost their sight. Fast forward to 2024, and acquiring that exact same customer now costs a staggering $30 to $60.
So here is the brutal math that actually kills most of these brands. If you spend $45 on Facebook ads to sell a hoodie that nets you a $25 profit, you didn't win. You just paid $20 for the privilege of giving a stranger a sweater. This is where most brands die, not on the factory floor, but right in their advertising accounts, pouring tens of thousands of dollars into cold traffic without checking if their core economics can actually support that kind of spend.
This dynamic right here is exactly why clothing brands are being forced to adopt an Amazon-style model just to survive. They know they're probably going to lose money on that first order, so the entire game shifts to order number 2, 3, and 4. If they can build an owned audience through email and SMS using retention platforms like Klaviyo, they can finally generate highly profitable future revenue without ever having to bid in that ruthless, expensive ad auction again.
But, honestly, that is so much easier said than done. The brutal reality is that earning true loyalty in fashion is incredibly difficult. Despite heavy discounts and VIP subscriptions, 70 to 80% of those hard-won customers will buy exactly once and then vanish forever. Subscriptions often make a fashion label feel like a trap, and constantly running sales, well, that just trains your customer to wait for the next big discount instead of ever paying full price again.
It really boils down to this. Nobody is actually just buying cotton. You're selling a feeling of identity and belonging.
much like Supreme does. A plain hoodie can be manufactured by 1,000 different factories around the world. What separates the $60 hoodie from the $12 one is the story wrapped around it. A single professional photo shoot can cost up to $15,000. It creates this bizarre paradox where the less functionally different your product is, the more expensive your branding absolutely must be to make people care. To make matters even tougher, we have to look at the copycat economy. A 2017 Supreme Court case confirmed a pretty devastating reality for indie designers. In the US, clothing is considered a useful article. So, while you can copyright a specific graphic on a shirt, you literally cannot copyright the actual cut or silhouette of the garment itself. A small brand can spend months perfecting a design only to watch fast fashion giants like Shein legally mass-produce it for half the price just a few weeks later.
Then you've got the ultimate gamble, inventory. Factories do not spin up their machines to make one hoodie at a time. To get anything made, you have to hit minimum factory order quantities. Say you want 3 colors across 5 sizes. Even at a modest minimum, you could instantly lock up $54,000 in a warehouse just waiting to become cash. If the trend passes and they don't sell, you have to liquidate at a massive discount. Cash flow, not profit on paper, is the ultimate brand killer.
Now, you might be thinking, well, just scale up and get more orders. But rapid growth actually makes logistics exponentially harder. It exposes the brand to uncontrollable macro shocks. Remember the 2021 shipping container crisis? The cost to move a single container from China spiked from $1,500 to over $20,000. Brands paid an absolute fortune for ads promoting seasonal collections that were physically stranded at sea for months, completely drying up their cash reserves while they helplessly waited.
When you lay the whole system out, the true picture's kind of shocking. The clothing brand is essentially just a high-risk middleman. They absorb all the inventory and shipping pain while everyone else takes a guaranteed, risk-free cut. Meta and Google get paid whether your ad converts or not. Stripe gets its fee even if you lose money on the sale. The brand takes 100% of the financial risk to bridge the gap between a factory selling fabric and an audience that has to be convinced to buy it.
And this is exactly why a founder's raw emotional passion for fashion can actually be their biggest downfall if they don't know how to read the data. Loving clothes and understanding the business of clothes are two entirely different skill sets. Founders might refuse to kill off a failing, money-losing style just because they're personally proud of the design. The hard truth is that beneath the aesthetic, a successful apparel brand is an incredibly cold, analytical, logistics and marketing machine.
The brands that actually survive long-term, they figured out the ultimate pivot. They behave like media companies that just happen to sell clothing, rather than clothing companies trying to make content. Just look at Nike. They spend billions of dollars on storytelling, culture, and capturing your attention. The real asset isn't the physical inventory sitting in a warehouse. It's the direct line of trust they have built with an audience that actively chooses to pay attention to them. Because these margins are just so incredibly fragile, the line between a great year and going broke is terrifyingly thin. In a wildly optimistic year, a brand generating $2 million in revenue might take home $200,000 in net profit. But if ad costs creep up just a little bit, or returns bump up to 35%, or a bad inventory bet ties up cash, that exact same $2 million brand can easily end up losing $100,000. One single hiccup can swing the balance sheet by hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So, by the time that hoodie actually lands in someone's closet, that mythical 80% markup from the very beginning of this explainer, it is completely gone. After the freight, the import duties, the warehouse fees, the returns, the payment processors, and the relentless cost of buying attention on social media, the real net margin is often 5% or less. That is literally all that survives the journey.
I'll leave you with this final thought as we wrap up. Knowing this brutal math, what is the true cost of selling a story? And is the risk really worth the reward? When you pull back the curtain, entering the fashion industry today isn't really about manufacturing garments at all. It's about building a highly complex engine to capture human attention. And if you can't master that engine, it simply doesn't matter how beautiful the clothes